Hello, everybody. I am the Warped Adventurer, and today I am here with another deck tech. Today we are going to be doing Katilda and Lier, a deck I made for my sister, and it is humans with a lot of instant and sorcery focus. And it ended up having quite a bit of focus on copying your opponent's stuff as well, and so it's got a little bit of fun thrown into the mix. So Um, we'll read what Katilda and Lear do. They are a 3/3. Whenever you cast a human spell, target instant or sorcery card in your graveyard gains flashback until end of turn. The flashback cost is equal to its mana cost. And in this deck, I run about 36 lands with not too many special lands. We got Castle Ardenvale. It enters battlefield tapped unless you control planes. It taps to add a white, and you can pay for or tap it to create a 1/1 white human creature token. So just a little bit of token creation, and it's pretty nice. Then Path of Ancestry. It enters tapped. Tap add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity, and when that mana is spent to cast a creature spell that shares a creature type with your commander, scry 1. And finally, we got Blighted Steppe. It taps for colorless. And you pay for tap, sacrifice it, gain 2 life for each creature you control. This deck tends to create a lot of tokens, and so Blighted Steppe was an easy add to do some mass life gain to outlive your opponents. Starting off with arguably the best part of Magic, the card draw, or things similar. First off, we got Skull Clamp again. And just when a creature dies, draw 2 cards. Creature gets +1/-1. And 1 to play and 1 to equip. Everybody knows. A lot of people love it. A lot of people hate it. Regardless, it's in here. Great to fill up your hand when you need it. Mentor of the Meek. Whenever another creature with power 2 or less enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 1. If you do, draw a card. Then you got Flow of Knowledge. Draw a card for each island you control, then discard 2 cards. Little bit of mass card draw there, just to fill up your hand and keep the engine running. Then you got Symmetrix Matrix. Whenever a creature with power equal to its toughness enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 1. If you do, draw a card. You create a lot of tokens, and most tokens have power equal to their toughness, so basically, whenever that happens, just pay some mana, draw some cards, keep the turn going. All great there. You got Experimental Augury. Look at the top 3 cards of your library, put 1 of them into your hand, the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Proliferate. The proliferation isn't bad. You got some counters in here, so it might end up helping. But the real big thing is this cost 2, it's an instant, and you just pick out what you want, throw the cards you don't want on the bottom. It lets you kind of like scrying, but more restrictive. Then you've got Doomscar Warrior. I wasn't really sure where to put him, so I just put him in the card draw. He's a 4/3 with backup 1 and trample, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player or battle, look at that many cards from the top of your library. You may reveal a creature or land card from among them, put it into your hand, and the rest go to the bottom of your library in a random order. He's pretty self-explanatory. I'll focus more on talking about the important cards, but I will go over all the cards. So we got Soul Warden. She is like Essence Warden from Marin, but white. 1 white for 1/1. Whenever another creature enters battlefield, you gain 1 life. And just like Essence Warden, it really builds up your life total for the late game, allowing you to survive the swings that will probably be coming your way when you build up to become Arch Enemy. Next is Heroes Reunion. It costs a green and a white. Target player gains 7 life, and it's an instant. It's really nice because it doesn't have to be you. If you want to build up a little bit of reputation, you can give someone else the life gain. Excuse me. If you want to build up a little reputation, you can give someone else the life gain. Super helpful and keeps your life high enough to be able to survive the swings coming your way. There's a decent amount of life gain in this deck, but most of the time it's going to be based on creatures because you get a lot of creatures in here. Next, you have War Report. You gain life equal to the number of creatures on the battlefield plus the number of artifacts on the battlefield. So that's going to easily gain you 80 some life. And that's probably going to make you archenemy no matter your board state, so keep that in mind. But it's an instant, so you can do it on somebody else's end step, so that way they won't see you as archenemy until it's going to be your turn. Then you got Joyous Respite. You gain 1 life for each land you control. It's going to be like 9 or 10 life, not going to be a whole lot, but regardless, the life gain is important. Moving on to ramp. Let's start with the obvious ones, right? You got Soul Ring. For obvious reasons, I mean, it's going to be in almost every commander deck. It's really good. Then you got Commander Sphere, another obvious one. It's going to be in almost every commander deck. You're going to be hearing that a decent amount here. You got Nature's Lore, just a fetch. It costs 2. It's a sorcery. Search your library for a forest card, put it on the battlefield, then shuffle. It's really nice because it doesn't come in tapped, so you can use it immediately. If you had forest non-basic forests, you can fetch those to field. Super helpful. Then you got Inga and Esika. 4/4 creatures you control have vigilance and tap, add 1 mana of any color. Spend this mana only to cast a creature spell. Whenever you cast a creature spell, if 3 or more mana from creatures was spent to cast it, draw a card. They cost 4, and they are human, so they do like the human synergies. They're human god, fun. But yeah, you use all those tokens you're creating to ramp, get a little bit of card draw to keep the engine going. Notably, you can't use that mana to cast your instants or sorceries, but that opens up your mana rocks and your lands to cast instants and sorceries while you tap your creatures to cast the humans to recast said instants and sorceries. Super helpful. Then you got Val, Candlekeep Researcher, 2/3 Vigilance. Tap an amount of colorless mana equal to Val Candlekeep's Researcher's toughness. This mana can't be spent to cast spells from your hand. So basically, she is in here to be able to add mana to help cast your instants and sorceries from the graveyard because that's what Katilda and Lier like to do. And yeah, a lot of fun, really helpful. Cost 4 for a 2/3 Vigi, but there's a decent amount of ways to put counters on stuff in here. Not a whole lot, but there's also ways to buff. So you'll be doing all right with her. And at minimum, tap, add 2 colorless mana. Use it to cast your instant sorceries. Super helpful. Next, we got Primal Growth. Kicker, sacrifice a creature, and search your library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield, then shuffle. If it was kicked, search for 2 basic lands, put them onto the battlefield, then shuffle. So it's basically pay 3, fetch 2 basic lands, and sack a creature. Super nice. They come in untapped. So just keep your turn going, keep ramping, all that nice fun. Then, a big important piece of this deck, the token creation. Now, most of these are going to be mass token creation, so we're going to start with the non-mass ones. First is Gather the Townsfolk. Pay 2, put 2/1/1 white human creature tokens on the battlefield. If you have 5 or less life, put 5 on the battlefield instead. Generally, if you're at 5 or less life, 5 humans is not going to help you much, but it's mainly there because it's cheap It's something you can cast an expensive human and still be able to flash back that to get a little bit extra creatures to use for, I don't know, your Inga and Esika to add a little bit more mana or stuff like that. Next, you have Whirler Rogue. 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, you get two Thopters with flying, and you can tap two untapped artifacts you control. Target creature can't be blocked this turn. So you just tap those two Thopters you just brought in because she can force tap them. You don't need to worry about summoning sickness if she's force tapping those stop Thops. And you make your big old creature who's a 15/15 unblockable until end of turn, and you beat people with it. Now onto the mass tokens. You got let's start from the bottom and work our way up number wise. First is increasing devotion. Create 5 humans, and if it was cast from a graveyard, create 10 instead. And as flashback for 9. Nice thing is if you cast a human, you can make that flashback back down to 5. Super nice. Then you have Call the Coppercoats. Choose any number of target opponents. Create X/1/1 white human soldier creature tokens, where X number of creatures those opponents control. Cost 2 mana for each target beyond the first. Really nice. Again, these are going to be pretty obvious because it's just pay some mana, create a whole bunch of tokens, and become threat. Very simple game plan. Next, we got Decree of Justice. It costs double X and 4 mana. Put X 4/4 white angel creature tokens with flying onto the battlefield. You can pay 3 to cycle it, to discard a card and draw a card. And when you cycle it, you may pay X to put X 1/1 white soldier creature tokens on the battlefield. So you can either pay 4 and double X to create some angels, or pay 3 and 1X or singular X to create more soldiers, but they aren't going to be as tough as the angels. Next, you got Deploy to the front. You get X/1/1 white soldier creature tokens on the battlefield, where X is the number of creatures on the battlefield. So you just create a whole lot of tokens. And Nomads Assembly. You get a 1/1 white core soldier creature token for each creature you control, and as rebound. So you're going to cast it again on your next turn. And then, because of Katilda and Lier, you can cast it a third time. Next up, we have the big beefy humans. So you got Veteran War Leader. Cost 3. Her power and toughness is equal to the number of creatures you control. And you can tap an untapped ally you control to give Veteran War Leader your choice of First Strike, Vigilance, or Trample until end of turn. Generally, you don't really have many other allies in here, so you won't be using that last ability. It's in here to just be as big as the amount of creatures you got. Then we got Geist Honored Monk. Star, Vigilance. Power and toughness equal number of creatures you control, and when she enters, you get 2 1/1 white spirit creatures with flying. Again, big old creature. Then you got Shana, Sissa's Legacy. Can't be the target of abilities your opponents control. Little bit of protection there. And she's as big as the number of creatures you control. And she costs 2, so she's super cheap. You cast her, be able to give a thing flashback and cast that too. And she's going to be pretty big. Then you got Silver Wing Squadron. Star, Flying Vigilance, cost 6, Human Knight. Power and toughness are each equal to the number of creatures you control, and whenever they attack, whenever a Silverwing Squadron attacks, create a number of 2/2 white knight creature tokens with vigilance equal to the number of opponents you have. And so, you just are going to, if you're in a 4-pod and all 4 people are alive. You swing with it and create 3 2/2 knights with vigilance on every attack. Super nice. And it's a big, beefy human. Then you got Squad Captain, cost 5, vigilance, 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, gets a 1/1 counter for each other creature you control. So pretty simple. It's a human and has vigilance, so it can block after it attacks too. And it just gets really big, and it's counters, so it's a bonus. Then you got moving on to buff spells. So first we have Tokashia, Dig Site Mentor. She says creatures you control have vigilance and tap surveil 1. And you can pay 2 colors, 2 green, 2 white, and 2 blue. Exile her from your graveyard and return any number of target artifact cards with total mana value 10 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Activate only as a sorcery. That last part doesn't matter too much, but if you just sacrifice your, I don't know, where are you? Just sacrifice your commander's sphere, then you could just get it back, I guess. Main part is the surveil and the vigilance. Super nice. However, for your Katilda Lier deck, I would suggest maybe finding a replacement for Tokashia. She's not necessary, but she's helpful regardless. Then you got Storm the Seed Core. Distribute 4 +1/+1 counters among up to 4 target creatures you control. Then creatures you control gain vigilance and trample until end of turn. It's really good when you're about to go for game and you need to give all your stuff Vigi and Trample, and then you also get an extra 4 power out of it. Notably, it's not an instant, so it can't respond to stuff, and you have to do it on your turn and not theirs and such, but still it's helpful. Feat of Resistance. Put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control, gains protection from the color of your choice until end of turn. That actually has a lot of different uses. If you're trying to swing with your massive creature, give it an extra 1/1 counter, and then give it protection from the color of the person you're trying to attack. That way they can't block, and you hit them really hard. Or it's an instant, so if someone's targeting your um, someone's targeting your squad captain with Go for the Throat, then you could give it protection from black until end of turn and a 1/1 counter. Super helpful. Um, Also, if someone's board wiping with uh, with a whelming wave or something, that probably would not help actually. Regardless, you got Harmonious Archon. 4/5 flying. Non-Archon creatures have base power toughness 3/3, and when the Archon enters, you create 2 1/1 white human creature tokens. That one can backfire pretty easily, but it's in here because you create a lot of 1/1s, so turning them all into 3/3s is devastating. It turns your opponent's 1/1. It turns your opponent's creatures into 3/3s too, so keep that in mind. Cathar's Crusade. This one is disgusting. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. So, yeah, remember that Nomads Assembly or that Deploy to the Front? You're creating 90 1/1 soldiers. Yeah, well, your entire board just got 90 +1/+1 counters, so we're all probably dead. So, the moment that is played, people are going to target it out the butt. It's gone if anyone has any responses. The moment this is played, no matter your board state, you're probably going to become arch enemy. So play it when you're ready to defend yourself. Next, we got True Conviction. Good old white token card everyone puts in their white token deck. Creatures you control have double strike and lifelink. So, that's self-explanatory. Next up is removal. You have Raven form, exile target artifact or creature. Its controller creates a 1/1 blue bird creature token with flying. And you can foretell it to remove it later. You can foretell it to cast it later. And there's not a lot of removal in this. In your deck, I suggest adding more removal. This one, I needed more space to add more humans and some fun instants and sorceries. Means it has less interaction, but it's okay. It makes up for it by becoming archenemy all the time. Next one's Disenchant. Pretty simple. Next up we have protection spells. Swiftfoot Boots. Same thing as in Marin, because it's super helpful and can protect Katilda and Lier or whatever creature you need protecting at the time. And Surge of Salvation. It costs a white, it's an instant, so it's super cheap. Use it any time. You and permanents you control gain hexproof until end of turn and prevent all damage that would be dealt uh, that black or red sources would deal to you to you and permanents you control gain hexproof until end of turn. Prevent all damage that black and or red sources would deal to creatures you control this turn. It's a very, very cheap, very helpful protection spell. Now, the prevent all damage that black or red stuff would do is a little too specific for my taste, but it gives all your stuff and yourself hexproof until end of turn, so that alone makes it worth it. The added on protection is just a little cherry on top. You have next up is the more variety kind of spells. So you got two of them. You got Sten, Paranoid Partisan. He's a 2/2, and when it enters battlefield, choose a card type other than creature or land. Spells with the chosen type cost one less to cast, and you can pay 3 to exile them, then return them to field on your next end step. That way, you can repick what you want. That way, you can repick what card you want cheapened, whether it's instant or sorcery. Then we got the Might and Weak Stone. This is mainly in here because over here you got Urza Lord Protector. That way you can get the Planeswalker Urza if you milled them. But also, it can either be removal or card draw, and it's a little bit of ramp that you can use to activate abilities or cast a few artifacts in here, mainly for activating abilities. So, there's that. Then you got the little bit of human synergies in here. Reflections of Ledjara. Enters, you choose a creature type, humans. Whenever you cast a human, you copy it. Keep in mind that if you're casting a legendary human, that legendary token will just fade away because unless you have a way to um, not lose legendary tokens, which I don't have yet, but when I do, this deck is gonna get it. Then you got Gallows at Willow Hill. You pay 3, tap 3 untapped humans you control, destroy target creature. Its controller puts a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying onto the battlefield. So pay 3, tap. It's a removal on a stick that you can do every turn. Super helpful. Then you have Sanctuary Lockdown. Humans you control get +1/+1. Pay 2, tap 2 untapped humans you control, tap target creature an opponent controls. It's a super helpful card and can keep your opponent's stuff tapped down. It can be used at instant speed. So if someone's you just pass a turn, and if that person's about to try and all out you, you can do everything you can to tap down their scary creatures to hopefully survive that attack. Then you got Sigarda, Heron's Grace. Sigarda, Heron's Grace. 4/5 flying. You and humans you control have hexproof. You could pay 2 colors, exile a card from your graveyard, and put a 1/1 white human soldier creature token onto the battlefield. So you could get a little bit of tokens out of her. She protects your humans and yourself. And 4/5 flying, so you got a flying creature to protect you in the air. So that's always good. Then you got Goldbug, humanity's ally. 3/3. He's a transformer, so he has more than meets the eye for 2. And prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to attacking humans you control. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, convert Goldbug. His other side is Goldbug Scrappy Scout. 1/3, he has living metal, so as long as it's your turn, he's a creature. And human spells you control can't be countered. Whenever him and at least one human attack, draw a card and convert him back. He's super helpful. You mainly want him on humanity's allies side. That way it protects your humans when they're attacking. And super, super nice. Then board wipes. There is 4 board wipes in this deck. You got Whelming Wave. Return to hand, except for Krakens, Leviathans, Octopuses, and Serpents. Man. We got Whelming Wave. Bounce all creatures to hand except for Krakens, Leviathans, Octopuses, and Serpents. Basically, you're going to be bouncing all creatures to hand. Then, Consuming Tide. Each player chooses a non-land permanent they control. Return all non-land permanents not chosen this way to their owner's hands. Then, you draw a card for each opponent who has more cards in hand than you. So, it's a board wipe, gets you a little bit of card draw to catch up with your opponents. It only costs 4, so it's the same as Whelming Wave and does more than Whelming Wave. However, everyone gets to pick one thing they want to keep, so it's not a total wipeout. You got Martial Coup for obvious reasons. 2 white X calls, you get X 1/1 white soldier creature tokens on the battlefield, and if X is 5 or more, destroy all other creatures. Then you got Fell the Mighty. Destroy all creatures with power greater than target creature's power. Super nice because you get to pick what creatures you want to live, basically. And yeah, moving on to cheap humans that are in there because they need to be cheap and they have a little bit of bonuses. Tireless Tracker. 3/2. Whenever land ETBs under your control, you investigate. And whenever you sack a clue, he gets a 1/1 counter. It gets bigger over time, gets you a tiny bit of card draw. Mainly, it costs 3, and it's a human, so it lets you flashback other stuff. Facade Reader costs 2. He's a 1/2. Pay 1 colors, tap, draw a card, then discard a card. Lets you reshape your hand. It costs 2 and it's human. Super nice in that regard. And yeah, then you got Dranith Magistrate. It shuts down your opponent's ability to cast their commanders and other things because your opponents can't cast spells from anywhere other than their hands. And he costs 2. And so he's really cheap. He screws up your opponents and he says your opponent's not you, so you get to cast your commander just fine. So it means he's a great turn 2 play. Because turn 2, Dranith Magistrate, your opponents can't cast their commanders. Turn 3, you play your commander, and you're in the game. Moving on to instant sorcery stuff that you like to play with. You got Gale, Waterdeep Prodigy. He's a 1/3. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand, you may cast up to 1 target card of the other type from your graveyard. If a spell would be cast from your graveyard this way, exile it instead. He's super helpful because he's lets you continue casting your humans to cast flashback things, but also when you cast an instant or sorcery from your hand, then he lets you cast another thing from your graveyard, so it just keeps the engine running on multiple fronts. Then you got Urza Lord Protector. Artifact, instant, and sorcery spells you cast cost one less to cast. And you pay 7 if you if you own and control Urza Lord Protector and an artifact named the Might and Weak Stone. Exile them, then meld them into Urza Planeswalker. So is this side the one with the abilities, or no? That's the art. The Since we're here, the abilities for the Urza Planeswalker is you may activate the loyalty abilities of Urza twice each turn rather than only once. You can plus him 2. Artifact, instant, or sorcery spells you cast cost 2 less to cast this turn, and you gain 2 life. Plus 1, draw 2 cards and discard a card. 0, create 2 1/1 colorless soldier artifact creature tokens. Minus 3, exile target non-land permanent. And minus 10, artifacts and planeswalkers you control gain indestructible until end of turn. Then destroy all non-land permanents. Super helpful, and he just really nice to cheapen your stuff to make it easier to keep the engine going. Then you got Invasion of Arcavius. It's a battle, so when it enters battlefield, search your library for instant or sorcery, uh, or search your graveyard or outside the game. That last part doesn't really matter. And put it into your hand, then shuffle. And it has 7 defense counters. And when it is defeated, you get Invocation of the Founders. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand, you may copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. Basically, it just easily copies all your spells from hand, and then later you can flashback them from your graveyard. So you could cast Nomad's Assembly from your hand, copying it, and then it rebounds on the next turn and it goes back to the graveyard. So that's 3 casts. Then you flashback it for a 4th cast. So rebound with Katilda in there, with Invasion, amazing. Then we're moving on to uh, copying and more instant sorcery appreciation. Wrath, Weatherlight, Stalwart. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you may tap to untap creatures you control. If you do, draw a card. And you may pay 5 to get creatures you control, get +1/+1, and gain vigilance until end of turn. And she costs 2, so you can, or he? Yeah, he costs 2. Sorry. I didn't mean to offend anyone there. Yeah, he can buff your creatures in one fell swoop, and he can get you some card draw to keep your turn going while you're ramping into mana, and it's super helpful. Then you got Ojutai Exemplars. They're 4/4. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, choose one. Tap target creature, or they gain first strike in lifelink until end of turn, or exile them, then return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control. So basically, you can tap down your opponent's stuff and then also make this gain you some life and possibly be able to hit people with easier. Then you got a fun dude, Taigam Ojutai Master. Instant sorcery and dragon spells you control can't be countered. So that last part doesn't matter. You don't have dragons in here. Unless you do, in which case, there you go. And whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand, if Taigam Ojutai Master attacked this turn, that spell gains rebound. So, yeah, basically it can give all your instants and sorceries rebound from your hand, and if you have the invocation, then that means you're going to be casting all your spells 4 times. Amazing. For just paying for them twice. Then you got Complete the Circuit, Convoke, so you can tap your creatures to pay for it. And then you may cast sorcery spells this turn as though they had flash. It's an instant cast on your opponent's turn, and then board wipe or something like that. Whenever you cast your next instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy that spell twice. You may choose new targets for the copies. Super helpful. It's going to allow you to cast like Nomad's Assembly on your opponent's turn, copy it twice. Invocation copies it, so that's 4 times cast. It's going to rebound on your next turn, go back to the graveyard, so that's 5 times. You cast it from the graveyard with flashback for a 6th time. Well, it's amazing. Here is a fun card. Mystic Reflection. Choose target non-legendary creature. The next time one or more creatures or planeswalkers enter the battlefield this turn, they enter as copies of the chosen creature. And as Foretell, so you could cast it later for cheaper. But yeah, that Nomad's Assembly. Yeah, no, actually, all going to be they're all going to be squad captains. So yeah, enjoy that. They're going to be 30. I don't know. At minimum, it would be 30, 31, 31s. So that's fun. Then quasi duplicate. Create a token that's a copy of target creature you control and has jumpstart. So you can cast it from your graveyard by discarding a card and paying its other costs. And exile it after you do that. Then Rite of Replication. Kicker 5. Put a token on the battlefield that's a copy of target creature. If Rite of Replication was kicked, put 5 of those tokens on the battlefield instead. So yeah, it's pretty simple to understand. You create 5 tokens of Doomscar Warrior, or 5 tokens of um, Tireless Tracker, or something like that. Fun stuff. And then you have recursion, because I feel most decks should have recursion. You have Marshall's Anthem, has multi-kicker 2, cost 4. Creatures you control get +1/+1, and when Marshall's Anthem enters the battlefield, return up to X target creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield, where X is the number of times Marshall's Anthem was kicked. So it enters, if you kicked it 4 times, you return 4 target creature cards to the battlefield. It's insanely helpful. Mass recursion, come back from a board wipe. Super nice. And it buffs your creatures. Sun Titan. This one's a little less recursion-y, but he's still insanely helpful. 6/6 vigilance, so he's a big old beater. He's not human, sadly, but he's a giant. When he enters or attacks, you may return target permanent card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So if you discarded lands, you can return them to the field. Or if you sacrificed your Blighted Steppe to gain a bunch of life, return it to the field and do it again, because it doesn't specify non-land. If you sacrificed your Commander's Sphere, you could sacrifice it. You could return it with Sun Titan to sacrifice it again to draw another card. A lot of stuff you could do with him, and he's also just really good at blocking. But yes, that is the Instant Sorcery deck. It's super nice. I wouldn't say it's as good as the Marin deck. I didn't have as much to say about it. I built it for my sister. She knows it a little bit better than I do. But it's still really good deck, and it's good at what it likes to do, and it likes to copy what you're doing and do it with other things as well. It's a lot of fun. And Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, consider subscribing. We got more magic content on the way. All right, guys. Stay safe, stay healthy. Peace out.